They said she was cursed. They said her pale skin was a sign from the ancestors, a warning, punishment. They crossed the street when she walked by. Mothers pulled their children close. Elders shook their heads and said nothing, which somehow felt worse than if they had spoken. But here is what nobody told you about Amina. She wasn't the curse. She was the light they didn't know how to handle. Her name was Amina, 13 years old, born and raised in Agra, a small dusty town in Delta State, Nigeria, where everybody knew everybody, and everybody had an opinion about her. She was albino, her skin soft and pale as harmattan sky, her eyes sensitive to the same sun that everyone else stood under without a second thought. She wore long sleeves in 38-degree heat not because she wanted to, but because the stairs hurt less when more of her was covered. And yet, despite all of it, Amina smiled. Not the broken kind of smile that people wear to convince themselves they're fine. A real smile. The kind that comes from a girl who has quietly decided, somewhere deep in her chest, that she refuses to become what people say she is. She loved books. She'd beg her father for old newspapers and read them cover to cover. She'd write numbers in the dirt with a stick, teaching herself basic arithmetic because the school fees were too much and dignity in Agra had a price tag. Her mother loved her but feared her too. That is a very particular kind of loneliness. To be loved by someone who is also ashamed of you. To watch your mother look away in public, not out of malice but out of survival. Amina understood. And she forgave. But she never forgot. She had one dream that refused to die no matter how many people stepped on it. She wanted an education. She wanted to sit in a proper classroom. She wanted a uniform, a backpack, a desk with her name on it. She wanted someone to look at her, really look and see a student. Not a ghost. Not a bad omen. Not a burden. Just a girl with a mind worth investing in. She didn't know yet that the road to that dream would almost destroy her first. The day Uncle Kate arrived in Agra, the whole compound shifted. He came in a car. He wore leather shoes. He smelled like airport and cologne and a life none of them had ever lived. He had been in Frankfurt, Germany for over a decade, working, building, becoming the family's proof that someone from Agra could make it. Everyone gathered. Everyone smiled. And Uncle Cade, tall, well-dressed, carrying gifts, walked through the compound like a man who had rehearsed this moment. He saw Amina standing at the edge of the crowd, and he walked straight to her. He crouched down, looked her in the eye, which almost nobody did, and said, "Come with me to Germany. I will put you in school. A real school. You will learn. You will grow. You will become something great." Amina's heart stopped, then started again faster. Her mother looked at her uncle, then at Amina, and saw something she recognized as relief. Her father was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. And Amina wept. But not from sadness. From the terrifying, overwhelming sensation of hope arriving after years of waiting. She packed her 2 dresses into a bag that evening, held her mother's hand longer than usual, and the next morning, before the village was fully awake, she left Agra, clutching a dream like it was the only thing she owned. Because it was. Frankfurt. Clean streets. Cold air. Buildings that scrape the sky. Everything precise. Everything ordered. And a house large, warm-smelling, full of the kind of furniture that costs more than her father earned in a year. Amina stood in the doorway of Uncle Cade's home, suitcase in hand, eyes wide. And then she met Aunt Renata. Aunt Renata looked at Amina the way some people look at a problem they didn't ask for. A long, slow look, from her pale face down to her worn-out sandals, and then a thin smile that never once reached her eyes. "You'll sleep in the back room," she said. "And in the morning you'll start early." Amina waited for the school part. It didn't come. By the end of the first week, the pattern was brutally clear. There was no school enrollment. There was no uniform, no backpack, no desk with her name. There was a mop. There were mountains of dishes. There was laundry 6 people's worth every day. There was a kitchen floor that Aunt Renata inspected on her hands and knees, looking for spots Amina had missed. And when she found them, even when she invented them, the punishment was more work. More silence. More of that cold, surgical humiliation that Renata had clearly perfected over years. She never screamed. Screaming would have been almost easier to process. Instead, Aunt Renata operated in a register of quiet cruelty, a raised eyebrow, a sigh that said you are not worth my voice, a plate of food given last, always the smallest portion, always the coldest. She called Amina the girl in front of guests. Never by name. Just, tell the girl to bring more water. The girl hasn't finished the ironing. The girl doesn't understand how things work here. And Uncle Cade? Uncle Cade was worse than Renata in the only way that truly mattered, because he knew exactly what he had promised. And he chose every single day to forget it. He never raised a hand. He was too polished for that. But his weapon was invisibility. He looked through Amina at mealtimes. He spoke around her. He introduced her to colleagues as a relative staying with us with a vague wave, the way you wave at something you can't quite categorize. One evening, early on, when Amina still had the courage to ask, she approached him quietly while he read the newspaper. Uncle, when will I start school? He looked up, let a breath out through his nose. Soon, he said, and went back to his newspaper. That soon would last 8 years. But if Renata was cold and Cade was absent, their 3 children, Tobias, Lena, and Marco, were something else entirely. They were teenagers who treated cruelty like entertainment. They called her the ghost loud enough that she could always hear. They mimicked her walk in the hallway, exaggerating her careful steps. They laughed when she flinched at sunlight. Marco once walked past her bucket of cleaning water and kicked it over. Then stood there watching her clean it up twice, laughing so hard he was holding his stomach. Lena told her school friends that they had a strange creature living in their house. She said it on a video call once, not bothering to lower her voice, knowing Amina was in the next room. These were children whose clothes Amina washed, whose food Amina cooked, whose mess Amina erased every morning before they woke up. And they looked at her like she was less than nothing. One night, exhausted and alone in her storage room, Amina pressed her back against the cold wall and asked the question that had been circling her for months. Was this it? Was this all her life would ever be? She almost let herself believe the answer was yes. Almost. But Amina had something Renata couldn't inventory, Cade couldn't erase, and Tobias, Lena, and Marco couldn't mock out of her. She still wanted to learn. 3 blocks from the house, she discovered it almost by accident. A community evening school, tucked between a pharmacy and a bakery. Adult learners, flickering fluorescent lights. A teacher who asked everyone's name on the first day and wrote it on the board. When that teacher wrote Amina in big capital letters and said, "Welcome," she had to look at the floor so nobody would see her cry. She started sneaking out after the family slept. Once a week. Then twice. German language. Mathematics. Basic literacy courses. She was years behind her peers in formal education but decades ahead in determination. And her teacher noticed immediately. "You have a gift," her teacher told her one evening. "Don't waste it." It was the first time in years anyone had spoken to her like she had a future worth protecting. And then she met Nadia. A quietly fierce woman, Nigerian, working 2 jobs, studying at night, with the kind of exhausted eyes that recognized Amina's story without being told it. They sat together every class. Nadia brought Amina extra food some evenings without making a scene about it. She lent her a dictionary. She listened. "Your life," Nadia told her one evening walking home, "is so much bigger than that house. I need you to know that." Amina held those words like medicine. But Renata's radar was always working. She found out about the classes. She didn't shout, she was Renata after all. She simply waited for Cade to come home, told him, and stood back. Cade cut the evening school fees. Amina had scraped together coin by coin from the small change she'd found in jacket pockets while doing laundry. He took her exercise books. He told her very calmly that her responsibility was to the house, and that she should be grateful she had a roof. That night the flicker nearly died. But Nadia had already done something quietly extraordinary. Before everything was taken, she had slipped Amina a folded piece of paper. A name. An address. A phone number. And 2 words. Houston, Texas. "There are people there who help women like us," she had said. "When you're ready." Amina tucked that paper inside the lining of her only shoe. And she waited. The decision didn't come in a dramatic moment. It came on a quiet Tuesday. Renata had humiliated her at dinner in front of a guest. pointing to Amina as she refilled water and remarking, laughing, that she's quite useful once you get past the appearance. The guest had chuckled politely, and Amina had stood there, holding a water jug, while a room full of people laughed at the fact of her existence. She walked back to the kitchen, set the jug down, and something inside her, some last fragile layer of tolerance, quietly broke. Not in anger, not in tears, in clarity. She thought, if I stay here one more year, I will forget who I am, and I will never find my way back. That night she did not sleep. She retrieved the paper from inside her shoe. She thought about Nadia. She thought about the teacher who wrote her name on the board. She thought about the 12-year-old girl in Agra who read newspapers in the dirt and dared to want more. She thought, that girl deserves better than this. At 4 a.m., while Cade, Renata, Tobias, Lena, and Marco slept, Amina folded her 2 dresses into the bag Nadia had once given her. She took nothing that wasn't hers. She left nothing behind except the mop and an empty storage room. She walked out of the house in Frankfurt. She did not look back. Not once. She didn't run away. She walked toward herself for the first time. Houston, Texas hit her like a second birth. Loud, colorful, overwhelming, and completely, beautifully indifferent to the color of her skin. She arrived with a contact address, a phone number, 40 euros converted to $32, and the bone-deep exhaustion of someone who has been carrying too much for too long. The first weeks were brutal. She cried in her rented room more nights than she didn't. She missed her mother. She missed the specific sound of Agra at dusk. She second-guessed herself at 2 a.m. when the room was quiet and fear was loud. But she kept moving. She found an adult education center. She walked in, sat down, and started from the beginning, with the same hunger she'd had at that evening school in Frankfurt, only fiercer now, because she knew what the alternative looked like. She worked nights at a laundry. Yes, ironic, she thought once, folding strangers' shirts, but this time I choose to be here. And this time I am paid. She earned her GED in under 2 years. She applied for community college. She was rejected the first time. She applied again. Accepted. She studied business administration because she had spent years watching how households were managed, resources wasted, and people undervalued, and she thought she could do all of it better. She was right. Within 7 years of landing in Houston, Amina owned a cleaning and facilities management company, 14 employees, contracts with 3 office buildings, and a waiting list of clients. She named the company after the Agra word for light. She became a mentor at the same adult education center that first enrolled her. And when Uncle K died back in Frankfurt, and the family sent word expecting her return for the funeral, expecting guilt, expecting the old Amina who flinched and apologized and made herself small, she sent a brief, respectful message. She did not go. The family erupted. Insults. Accusations of ingratitude. After everything we did for you. Threats. Drama across WhatsApp groups she hadn't known existed. She read each message. Then she blocked every number. Not from bitterness. From self-preservation. From the knowledge that some doors once closed need to stay that way. Amina's children asked her once over dinner why they had never visited family in Germany. And she sat them down. And she told them everything. Not to make them bitter. Not to make them fear the world. But so they would know deeply in the place where it counts that where you start is not where you are sentenced to end. So they would know that people will try to use your differences against you. Your skin, your background, your accent, your story. And that those people are almost never as powerful as they seem. They are simply afraid of anyone who refuses to shrink. So they would know that dreams are not luxuries. They are not naive. They are not things to be abandoned because life gets hard. Dreams are the only compass that never lies. Amina was mocked for her skin in a village that didn't understand her. She was robbed of her childhood by a man who weaponized a promise. She was made invisible in a house she kept spotless. She was humiliated by children who grew up wearing the clothes she washed. And yet, the girl who read newspapers in the dirt of Agra at 13? She became a business owner, a mentor, a mother who tells the truth, a woman the world could never again ignore. So if you are watching this and you are in your own version of that storage room, cold, invisible, wondering if the dream was stupid to begin with, hear this. It was never stupid. They were just afraid of what would happen if you ever found out how bright you really are. Don't give up. Don't go back. Keep walking toward yourself. From a forgotten girl in Agra to a woman the world could never ignore. Never let where you start decide where you end. Your dreams are bigger than your pain.